In this video, I'm teaching you guys how to take creative, artsy looking pictures, not using a professional camera, but using any smartphone. And in this case, we're using the budget mid-ranged Redmi Note 10 Pro that was just launched. We're gonna be using the 108 megapixel camera and the Tele-Macro lens on this to take some really artsy Photoshop pictures, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. So let's get started. So I'm gonna be teaching you 3 different techniques in this video. The first one being how to make yourself float. So for the first one, I used a stool. You're gonna need a tripod to set the phone down on in order to lock it so it doesn't move anywhere and your exposure and everything stays fit. I'm using the Pro mode to take this, like I said, 108 megapixels. I set myself in the frame on the chair. I made my pose to make it look like I was falling, had the self timer turn on and take the picture for me. So once that's done, I take a couple of pictures to make sure I get at least one good pose. And don't forget to get out of frame to take one clean plate picture where basically there's nothing there so I can erase and add in details later. So going through the different pictures, I choose the best one that I find, which is this falling downwards. I'm going to show you a second pose as well, how to do it. But this is the first one we're going to start with. And pretty much the first step is going to be to select the stool right there underneath. And that's what I'm going to be doing here. We're going to take the pen tool and draw around this in order to select the stool. And then we have the layer underneath that is empty, which was the clean plate, like I told you guys. Then all we have to do is create a mask down there and it is gone. The stool disappeared. Now obviously there's a main problem there, which is the shadow. We have a shadow down there and it's pretty visible that we removed something. So what we're going to do in order to fix this is basically paint it back in. So I'm using the clone stamp tool here to paint all of the information back in. This takes a little bit of time, but once you do get it done, it looks really, really good and realistic. You can go over it a couple of times to get it done perfectly. Next step is to edit the colors and get it to look exactly how I want, stylize it. And this is my typical process of how I usually edit my pictures. So I'm going for that similar look. Once that's done, you have a floating picture and you're floating mid-air. You can do a couple of poses. This is the second pose that I took, like I'm taking a macro shot on the floor. The second type that I'm going to be teaching you is making yourself either really tiny or really huge. So first we're going to start with making yourself really tiny. So I have this really cool looking car toy. So I put the phone down on a tripod and I try to get the best possible angle to get a picture of this with the door open. Try to make it look pretty cool. Once we have that picture, we can also take a different picture of myself from the same sort of angle, same location, same lighting, and I'm going to cut myself out, put myself in that tiny frame. So it's more of a miniature kind of thing. So the first step is going to be resizing myself to fit into that scene. So how I would really look if I was actually there. So you make a selection of yourself. I don't really do this effect much, but I just wanted to show you guys a fun little way of doing it. This is not supposed to look very realistic, but it's more about having fun with what you have. So we're going to resize ourselves, make sure we fit in perfectly to the scene. Once we've done that, we're going to make sure we do draw in our shadows because we want to fit into the scene as perfectly as we can. The sunlight was pretty harsh. You also have to add in that reflection to the car. So I duplicated myself, flipped it around, and then I'm able to add that reflection into the hood of the car. Once I've done that, I'm obviously going to paint it out in and out, like increase transparency to make it look more and more realistic. It's all about that. Then we're going to dodge and burn to make myself pop a little bit more. Once we're done with that, we're going to blur myself a little bit to make it look more realistic because I can't be super sharp while the car is dim. Then I added some headlights and did the color correction. Overall, the headlights is just a quick little touch to make it look more realistic. Again, we're not trying to go super real here. It's supposed to be fun. And yeah, color grade it, crop it up to make it fit perfectly, add a little bit of dust and stuff around. And there you go. You have a miniature looking picture that I think looks nice. It's not supposed to look realistic. It's just nice. A second example where you can make yourself huge within the same type of effect is going to follow the same concept as the first test that I showed you, the first tutorial that I showed you, which is removing the chair from underneath. And the second step is going to be removing that bluish tint. So I removed the blue tint. Then I did the same thing, adding in the shadows to make myself look huge. So the goal in this one is the opposite of the previous one. Previous one I was tiny, this one I'm huge. So we're gonna basically add the shadows in and make sure that my hand goes behind the swing to make it look like I'm actually interacting with it. Everything about the little details. Color correct it, color grade it, and do a little bit of dodge and burn to the clothes, the shoes, and boom, there you go. You have it. You're a massive person in a tiny swing set. So you can make yourself tiny or massive both pretty easily with this step. The third and final effect I'm showing you guys is using the Tele-Macro lens on this. We're going to take a close-up of my eye and then add in some stuff into it to make it look very 3D and real. So what I'm going to do is switch over to the Pro mode, switch my lens to the macro lens, and then change all these settings to match the environment I'm in. Then obviously I'm going to get in front of the camera and remove my glasses because I have glasses. And then we're gonna bring it really close to the eye. As you can see, the Tele-Macro on this is absolutely amazing. I love this. I'm gonna make a whole new video on that. But you can get really close, and I waited for the sunlight to be right so I wouldn't get reflections as much as you saw earlier. So once you have that, what we're gonna do is work with this, but I got this asset online of this nice little mountain ridge, I don't know, volcano, whatever. So I put it in and aligned it pretty much to the pupil so it fits in exactly the right place. Once we have that, we're gonna mask around it, recolorize it, and add in cloud assets. And then it's pretty much just a step of color grading, adding different colors, different elements left and right, different clouds to cover up some of the edges to make it look more and more realistic. The point of this is, again, not too much realism, but more creativity. And then we just color graded overall. We added clouds, we added the mountain underneath, and you create different layers. Once you're done with the color grade, you get the final image. And I think it looks pretty good. So there's multiple ways you can take it. This is one shot, and in the second shot, I took another picture I took with a drone, which is in Genting. And it's something like a similar sort of concept. You do the same thing pretty much, but I cut out the trees and stuff and just left the highway, the road itself, and then we did the same thing. We added in clouds, color graded it, and boom. So there's two different types. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer. Do you prefer the cloud with the volcano, or do you prefer the roads structure thing? So that's pretty much it. So that's about it. That's how you can take pretty artsy and creative pictures using a budget smartphone. I mean, obviously it involved a bit of editing and I skimmed through a lot of that, but the point is, doesn't matter what the price of the phone is. This one is pretty cheap. It has a 108 megapixel camera as well as a Tele-Macro lens that allowed me to do all of this. Pretty insane considering the price point and how tiny it is. It fits in your pocket and it can do that kind of professional work. So if you guys enjoy that, make sure you hit that like button and do consider subscribing to the channel as well. I'll be doing more tutorials and stuff like this in the future. Thank you guys for watching, and bye bye.